Chapter 1. The kick that changed everything. The glass shattered against the marble floor like a gunshot, and every conversation in the Sovereign Club died. Mira Castellan felt the hot coffee soak through her white button-down shirt before the pain registered. A sharp, brutal kick to her ribs that sent her sprawling backward into the service station. The tray clattered. Porcelain exploded, and the man who'd just knocked her down didn't even blink. "Watch where you're going," Dominic Hale said, his voice carrying that particular brand of boredom that only came from old money and older arrogance. From her position on the floor, Mira looked up at him. 6'3" of sharp jawline and designer suit. Dark hair that probably cost more to maintain than her monthly rent. Eyes the color of amber in firelight. Beautiful and utterly cold. The Sovereign Club's most notorious regular. Son of business magnate Marcus Hale, rumored to be connected to every major deal that happened in Ashwood, Falls, and half the surrounding counties. And he was looking at her like she was something stuck to his shoe. Mira started, then stopped. Her ribs screamed. She'd taken worse hits in the ring back in her fighting days, but those had been expected. This was different. This was humiliation served with a side of casual cruelty. "Dominic," one of his companions said nervously, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses. "Maybe we should..." "Should what?" Dominic's lip curled. "Apologize because the help can't walk straight?" The help. Mira tasted copper and realized she'd bitten her tongue when she fell. She pressed her palm against the floor, feeling the grit of broken china grind into her skin. 3 months. She'd been working here 3 months, keeping her head down, staying invisible. Building a new life far from the underground fighting circuits of Chicago. Far from the debts and the dealers, and the people who wanted to own her talent for violence. She'd promised herself she was done with that life. But old instincts died hard. Her body knew exactly how to move. Sweep his legs, drive her elbow into his solar plexus, use his height against him. She could have him on the ground in 3 seconds, choking on his own expensive cologne. Instead, she took a breath and started gathering the broken pieces. "Mira." The manager, Gerald, appeared at her side, his face pale and pinched. "Go to the back. Now. I'll handle this." "I'm fine," she said quietly. "I can clean." "Back. Room. Now." Gerald's eyes darted to Dominic, then back to her, filled with something that looked uncomfortably like pity. "Please." She stood slowly, feeling every eye in the dining room track her movement. The late October crowd was light but influential. Lawyers, developers, old families with older secrets. The kind of people who came to the Sovereign Club because they could, because membership meant you mattered. And they'd just watched one of their own kick the waitress like she was a dog. Mira kept her head up as she walked toward the kitchen, her wet shirt clinging to her skin, her ribs throbbing with every breath. Behind her, she heard Dominic's laughter, sharp and brief, like breaking glass. She pushed through the swinging doors into the kitchen's fluorescent brightness and kept walking, past the line cooks who pretended not to notice, past the dishwashing station, all the way to the small staff bathroom at the back of the building. Only when she locked the door did she let herself breathe. The face in the mirror wasn't the one she remembered from Chicago. That girl had been 22, fierce, with eyes that held no fear and knuckles that were always split and healing. This version was 25, softer around the edges, wearing exhaustion like a second skin. She'd dyed her hair darker, cut it shorter, changed her name from Miranda to Mira, built a wall between who she'd been and who she was trying to become. But the bruise already forming on her ribs, that felt like the universe laughing at her. She peeled off her shirt carefully, hissing at the tenderness. The kick had landed perfectly, right on the ribcage, enough to hurt but not enough to break anything. Professional, almost, like he knew exactly how much force to use. Strange. Mira ran cold water over a paper towel and pressed it to her side. In Chicago, she'd been the one doing the hitting. Street fights at first, then underground rings where the money was better and the questions were fewer. She'd been good, better than good. Undefeated in 23 fights before her coach sold her contract to a man who wanted to own more than just her fists. She'd run before that could happen. 3 months of invisible living. 3 months of minimum wage and fake smiles and pretending she was just another girl trying to make rent. 3 months of safety. And Dominic Hale had shattered it with one casual kick. A knock on the door made her jump. "Mira?" Gerald's voice tentative. "You okay in there?" "Fine," she lied, pulling on her spare shirt from her locker. A simple black tee that at least wouldn't show the coffee stains. "I'm coming out." She opened the door to find Gerald looking even more uncomfortable than before. Behind him, inexplicably, stood Dominic Hale. Up close, he was worse. Taller. Broader. There was something about him that made her skin prickle with awareness. Not fear exactly, but something older and more primal. His amber eyes fixed on her with an intensity that felt physical. "Mr. Hale wanted to apologize," Gerald said, in the tone of someone who very much did not believe this. Dominic's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "My father insists on it." "Not, I'm sorry. Not even a real apology. Just a statement of fact, delivered with all the warmth of a business transaction." Mira met his eyes, held them, and saw something flicker in that amber gaze. Surprise, maybe, that she wasn't looking away. "Apology accepted," she said flatly. "Mira," Gerald started. "It's fine." She stepped around them both, heading back toward the main floor. Her shift wasn't over for another 4 hours, and rent was due next week. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford. But as she walked away, she felt Dominic's eyes on her back like a physical touch, tracking her movement with an attention that felt too focused, too aware. Like he was seeing something he hadn't expected to find. In the kitchen doorway, she paused and glanced back. He was still watching her, head tilted slightly, his expression unreadable. And for just a second, less than a heartbeat, she could have sworn his eyes flashed with something that wasn't quite human. Then he turned and walked away, and Mira told herself she'd imagined it. But that night, lying in her studio apartment above the hardware store, her ribs aching and sleep refusing to come, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. That the kick wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. And Dominic, Hale, whoever or whatever he really was, had just become very, very dangerous. Chapter 2. The Forest Doesn't Lie. The bruise had bloomed overnight, a violent purple-black stain across Mira's ribs that made breathing an exercise in careful control. She wrapped it before her shift, the elastic bandage tight enough to provide support, but not so tight she couldn't move. Old habits. Fighter's instincts. The Sovereign Club felt different when she arrived. Heavier somehow, like the air itself had thickened. "Table 12, Gerald said without preamble, not meeting her eyes. "VIP section." Mira's stomach dropped. "Gerald." "He requested you specifically." The manager's face was drawn, worried. "Look, if you want to call out, I understand. But the Hales?" He trailed off, shaking his head. "They're not people you say no to in this town." She thought about her bank account. Thought about the studio apartment that was the first place in 3 years she'd felt almost safe. Thought about how running had worked before, how it could work again. But she was tired of running. "Fine," she said, tying her apron. "Table 12. The VIP section occupied the back corner of the club, separated from the main dining room by frosted glass panels and careful architecture. Private. Exclusive. The kind of space where deals were made and secrets were kept. Dominic sat alone at a table meant for 6, his attention fixed on a tablet in front of him. He'd traded yesterday's suit for something more casual. Dark jeans, a charcoal Henley that clung to shoulders that seemed broader than she remembered. His hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked up as she approached, and those amber eyes locked onto her with immediate, unsettling focus. "Coffee," he said. Not a question, a statement. "Good evening to you too," Mira replied, her voice steady despite the way her ribs protested every breath. "Anything else?" His jaw tightened. "Just coffee." She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Wait." Mira looked back, one eyebrow raised. Dominic's expression was difficult to read, something between irritation and curiosity, like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't want to be interested in. "You're not afraid of me." "Should I be?" "Most people are." "I'm not most people." The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "No," he said quietly. "You're not." The moment stretched between them, charged with something Mira couldn't name. Then she broke it, heading back to the service station with her heart beating faster than it should. She brought him coffee. He barely touched it. An hour passed, then 2. He didn't order food, didn't take calls, just sat in that corner booth watching the dining room with an alertness that felt almost predatory. Watching her, specifically. Every time she glanced up, his eyes were on her. Not leering, that she could have handled. This was different. Assessing. Like he was trying to understand something that didn't make sense. It was unnerving as hell. At 9 o'clock, Gerald dismissed her early. "Mr. Hale paid for the full shift," he said, avoiding her gaze. "Said you should go home and rest." "He what?" "Just go, Mira, please." She changed out of her uniform in a daze, her mind racing. This wasn't normal. Rich men didn't apologize through their fathers, didn't request specific waitresses, didn't pay them to leave early. Unless they wanted something. The October night was cold when she stepped outside, sharp enough to make her breath mist. The Sovereign Club sat on the edge of Ashwood Falls Historic District, where manicured lawns gave way to the dense forest that surrounded the town on 3 sides. Most people took the main road back toward the residential areas. Mira had never been most people. She took the forest path, a narrow trail that cut through the woods and shaved 15 minutes off her walk home. It was darker, yes, and probably not the smartest choice. But she'd spent 3 years learning to trust her instincts about danger, and the forest had never felt threatening. Until tonight. 50 yards in, she heard it. Movement in the underbrush, too large to be a deer, too deliberate to be random. Footsteps that matched her pace, staying just out of sight in the shadows between the trees. Mira stopped walking. The footsteps stopped. "I know you're there," she called out, her voice carrying through the still air. "You can either come out, or I can make you come out. Your choice." Silence. Then, slowly, a shape emerged from the darkness. Not Dominic. A wolf. Massive, easily twice the size of any natural wolf she'd ever seen in documentaries. Its fur was dark, almost black in the dim moonlight, and its eyes were amber. Mira's breath caught. She should run. Every survival instinct screamed at her to run, but her fighter's brain was already calculating distances, angles, the futility of trying to outrun something built for pursuit. "Well," she said softly, her hand moving to the small knife she kept strapped to her ankle, a habit from Chicago she'd never broken. "This is new." The wolf took a step closer, then another. Its movements were fluid, controlled, nothing like the wild aggression she'd expect from a predator stalking prey. It was cautious, almost gentle. When it was close enough to touch, it sat. Mira stared at it. The wolf stared back. Those eyes. She knew those eyes. Dominic? The name came out as barely a whisper. The wolf's ears twitched. It made a sound low in its throat. Not quite a growl, not quite a whine. Something complicated and thoroughly not animal. "Oh my God," Mira breathed. "You're—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't make her brain accept what her eyes were showing her. Werewolves weren't real. They were stories. Legends. Things that belonged in movies and late-night cable. Not in the actual forest behind an actual town where actual people lived. Except one was sitting 3 feet away from her, looking at her with eyes that had watched her all evening from a corner booth in the Sovereign Club. The wolf stood slowly, as if afraid sudden movement would scare her away. It took a step back, then another, putting distance between them. Giving her space, giving her a choice. Run or stay. Fight or trust. Mira's ribs ached. Her hands shook. Everything she thought she knew about the world had just shifted sideways into something stranger and infinitely more dangerous. But she'd built a life on reading violence, on understanding the split-second difference between a threat and a bluff. And this, whatever this was, didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a confession. "Why did you kick me?" she asked suddenly, the question surprising even herself. "Yesterday, in the club. Why?" The wolf went very still. Then, deliberately, it lowered its massive head, almost like a bow. An apology. A real one this time. Mira felt something crack in her chest, some protective wall she'd built, some determination to stay disconnected from everything and everyone in this town. "You're going to have to explain this," she said quietly. "All of it. When you're—" She gestured vaguely at all of him. "Human again." The wolf's tail moved, not quite a wag, but close. Then it turned and melted back into the forest, moving with impossible silence, leaving Mira alone on the path with a racing heart and a world that had suddenly become much, much bigger. Chapter 3. The Truth Has Teeth. Mira didn't sleep that night. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling of her studio apartment, replaying the moment over and over. The wolf, the eyes, the impossible reality that Dominic Hale, arrogant, cold, untouchable Dominic Hale, was something that shouldn't exist. At 3 a.m, she gave up on sleep and made coffee. At 4, she pulled out her laptop and started searching. Ashwood Falls werewolf legends, Hale family history, unexplained incidents in the surrounding forest. The internet gave her nothing useful. Plenty of folklore, scattered ghost stories, but nothing concrete. Nothing real. By the time dawn broke gray and cold over the town, Mira had made a decision. She was done waiting for explanations. If Dominic wanted to lurk in forests and upend her understanding of reality, he could damn well face her in daylight and answer questions. She found his address through the club's client database, something Gerald would fire her for accessing, but that seemed insignificant compared to everything else. The Hale estate sat 5 miles outside town, accessible by a private road that wound through dense forest before opening onto manicured grounds. The house was more mansion than home. All stone and glass and sharp modern lines that somehow fit into the wilderness around it. Money. Power. The kind of place that declared its own rules. Mira parked her 15-year-old Honda next to a sleek black Mercedes and felt distinctly out of her depth. But she'd faced down men twice her size in underground rings. She'd survived Chicago's worst neighborhoods. She could handle one werewolf with an attitude problem. She knocked. The door opened almost immediately, like he'd been waiting. Dominic stood in the doorway wearing jeans and nothing else, his dark hair wet like he'd just showered. In the morning light, she could see things she'd missed before. The faint scars across his ribs, the lean muscle of someone who fought regularly, the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. He looked at her for a long moment, then stepped back. You should come in. The interior was unexpectedly warm. All exposed wood beams and stone fireplaces. Expensive, but not cold. Books lined the walls. Art that looked original. A space that felt lived in, not just displayed. Dominic led her to a kitchen that could have been featured in magazines, then poured 2 cups of coffee without asking if she wanted any. He slid one across the granite counter toward her. You found me, he said. Not a question. You made it pretty easy. Mira wrapped her hands around the mug, needing something to hold. The hole turning into a wolf thing was a decent hint. His mouth twitched. I didn't plan that. What did you plan? To avoid you. He said it bluntly, meeting her eyes. To pay you off and forget you existed. That's a terrible plan. I know. He drank his coffee, watching her over the rim. You want answers. I want to understand why you kicked me. Why you watched me all night. Why you followed me into the forest as... She gestured vaguely. That. Dominic set down his mug carefully. The kick was a mistake. I was meeting with the pack elders, discussing territory disputes. I was distracted, on edge, and you appeared out of nowhere carrying something that smelled like... He stopped, shook his head. It doesn't matter. I reacted on instinct. Wrong instinct. And the rest? That's more complicated. Try me. My reality already includes werewolves. I think I can handle complicated. He studied her face like he was making a decision. Then he moved around the counter, closing the distance between them. Not threatening, but deliberate. Up close, she could see gold flecks in those amber eyes, could smell something wild and clean, like pine and rain. When I kicked you, he said quietly, you didn't cower. You didn't cry or call for the manager. You stood up and looked at me like you were calculating exactly how to make me regret it. And your scent... He paused. You smelled like a fighter, like someone dangerous pretending to be harmless. Mira's pulse kicked up. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. His voice was gentle but certain. You've hurt people before, professionally. The way you move, the way you assess exits and threats. You're not just a waitress, Mira. You're someone hiding. She should deny it. Should walk out right now before this got more complicated. Instead, she said, Chicago. Underground fighting circuit. 3 years. I walked away from a bad situation and I'm trying to stay walked away from it. Dominic nodded slowly. That's why I watched you. Why I couldn't stop watching you. In our world, strength recognizes strength, even when you're trying to hide it. Our world, Mira repeated. You mean werewolves. Shifters. The pack that controls this territory. My father is the alpha. The king, essentially. He hesitated. I'm supposed to be his heir. The next leader. But that requires certain things. Control. Absolute dominance. The ability to make hard choices without hesitation. And you kicked a waitress because the pack was watching. Because I was supposed to demonstrate that I'm above human concerns. That I can be ruthless when necessary. His jaw tightened. I chose you because you were nobody. Someone who wouldn't matter. The words should have stung. Instead, Mira felt something else. Recognition. She knew what it was like to perform for an audience, to do violence because it was expected. But I did matter, she said softly. Yes. The single word carried weight. You smelled wrong. Not like prey or a civilian. Like something my instincts couldn't categorize. And then you looked at me with absolutely no fear, and He broke off, turning away. I needed to understand why. So you followed me into the forest. I shouldn't have. Pack law is clear. We don't reveal ourselves to humans. The penalty for exposure is severe. But I needed you to know. Needed you to understand that what happened at the club wasn't about you being weak. He looked back at her. It was about me being a coward. Mira processed that. Outside, birds were starting to sing, normal morning sounds in an increasingly abnormal situation. What happens now? She asked. Now you have a choice. Dominic's expression was carefully neutral. You can walk away. Forget this conversation. Forget what you saw. I'll make sure you're safe, that no one from the pack bothers you. You go back to your quiet life. Or you let me explain. Let me show you what we are, how we live. Let me... He stopped, something vulnerable flickering across his face. Let me make this right. It was the vulnerability that decided her. That crack in his armor that suggested he wasn't just the cold man from the club, but something more complicated, more real. I want the truth, Mira said. All of it. About shifters, about your pack, about why I smell wrong to you, and then I'll decide. Dominic's shoulders relaxed fractionally. That's fair. Also, you need to wear a shirt. It's distracting. He blinked, then actually smiled. A real smile that transformed his entire face, making him look younger and dangerously attractive. Deal, he said. And just like that, Mira Castellan stopped running and started falling into something far more dangerous than any underground fight ring. She was falling into the world of wolves. Chapter 4. Blood and Moonlight. Dominic returned wearing a black t-shirt, which somehow made him look more dangerous rather than less. He gestured for her to follow him through the house, past rooms filled with afternoon light, until they reached a study lined with ancient-looking books and modern technology in equal measure. He pulled a leather-bound journal from the shelf, the pages yellowed with age, the handwriting inside flowing and ornate. My great-great-grandfather's account, Dominic said, laying it open on the desk. Written in 1847, when the pack first established this territory. We're not the monsters from movies, Mira. We're something older, more complex. She leaned over the pages, trying to decipher the faded ink. What are you, then? We call ourselves the Lunar-born. Shifters whose bloodlines trace back centuries, maybe longer. The change isn't a curse, it's inheritance. Genetic, passed through families, controlled by training and willpower. He paused. Most of the time. Most of the time? The full moon makes it harder to maintain human form. Strong emotions can trigger involuntary shifts. And if we lose control completely... He didn't finish the sentence, but Mira heard what he wasn't saying. Danger. Violence. The beast winning over the man. How many of you are there? She asked. In Ashwood Falls? About 60 in this pack. My father, Marcus, is the alpha. He holds absolute authority. Beneath him are the betas, the enforcers, the trackers, each with specific roles, specific expectations. Dominic's voice went flat. I'm supposed to challenge him within the year. Prove I'm strong enough to lead, strong enough to make the hard choices. Like kicking waitresses? He flinched. The pack operates on dominance hierarchies. Strength is everything. Weakness, or the appearance of weakness, can get you killed. My father wanted me to demonstrate I could be ruthless, that I wouldn't hesitate to assert power over humans. But you did hesitate. Not then. After. He met her eyes. When I saw you stand up. When I realized you weren't afraid, just furious. When I followed your scent and found you'd taken the forest path alone at night, like you didn't understand how dangerous these woods are. His voice dropped. When my wolf decided you were the most interesting thing I'd encountered in years. Mira's breath caught. Your wolf? The shifter consciousness. It's not separate exactly, but it's not entirely me either. It's instinct, primal drives, a different way of processing the world. And it recognized something in you that my human side didn't want to acknowledge. Which is? Dominic hesitated, then reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was warm, calloused, gentle despite the strength she could feel coiled beneath his skin. "You're not prey," he said quietly. "You're a fighter who chose not to fight. Someone strong who decided to be soft. That kind of control, that kind of choice, it's rare. My wolf respects it, wants to understand it." He paused. "Wants to protect it." The air between them felt charged, dangerous in a completely different way than before. Mira should pull her hand back. Should remember that this man had hurt her, that his world operated on violence and hierarchy and rules she didn't understand. But his thumb was tracing small circles on her wrist, and his eyes held something raw and honest that made her chest tight. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Why not just let me walk away like you said?" "Because I can't." The confession seemed to cost him something. "I've tried. I spent all last night trying to convince myself you were better off not knowing, that exposing you to this world was selfish. But then I caught your scent on the wind this morning, knew you were coming here, and I—" He laughed, short and bitter. "I was relieved. My wolf was practically jumping for joy. That's insane." "Yes," he didn't argue. "Welcome to my life." A door slammed somewhere in the house. Heavy footsteps approached, and Dominic's entire body went rigid. He released her hand and stepped back just as a man appeared in the doorway. Marcus Hale looked like an older, harder version of his son. Same dark hair shot through with silver, same amber eyes, but with an edge that made Mira's fighter instincts scream warnings. He radiated authority, the kind of presence that made people instinctively step back. His gaze swept over Mira with obvious dismissal before landing on Dominic. "What is this?" "A conversation," Dominic said evenly. "Nothing that concerns you. Everything in this territory concerns me." Marcus moved into the room with predatory grace. "You brought a human to the family estate. Revealed yourself to her based on her scent when you entered this room. Do you understand how catastrophically stupid that is?" Mira started to speak, but Dominic's hand shot out, a silent warning. His attention never left his father. "She discovered me in the forest. I made a choice. You made a mistake." Marcus's voice went dangerously soft. "Pack law is absolute. Exposure risks everyone. The penalty— I know the penalty." The two men stared at each other, something primal and violent simmering in the air between them. Mira felt like she was watching a fight that hadn't started yet but was inevitable. Finally, Marcus turned his attention to her. "What's your name, girl?" "Mira Castellan." "And what do you do, Mira Castellan?" "I'm a waitress at the Sovereign Club." The lie came easily. She knew better than to mention Chicago, the fighting, the other life. But Marcus's eyes narrowed. "No, you're not." He inhaled deeply, and something changed in his expression. "You smell like violence, like blood and adrenaline and barely leashed aggression. You're a predator playing at domestication." Mira's heart hammered. Dominic moved almost imperceptibly, positioning himself between her and his father. "She's under my protection," Dominic said. Pack law allows me to decide whether a human is a threat." Marcus's smile showed too many teeth. "And this one? She's definitely a threat. The question is whether she's worth the risk." He studied Mira with an intensity that felt like being flayed open. Then, abruptly, he laughed. "You've found yourself a fascinating problem, son. Let's see if you can solve it without getting everyone killed." He headed for the door, then paused. "Bring her to the gathering tomorrow night. Let the pack see what has my heir so distracted. Let them decide if she's strong enough to survive knowing our secrets. The door closed behind him with ominous finality. Dominic exhaled slowly. That went better than expected. Better? Mira's voice came out higher than intended. He basically threatened to kill me. He threatened to let the pack kill you. It's different. At her expression, he added quickly, I won't let that happen, but you need to understand. You're in this now, really in it. The gathering tomorrow isn't optional. What happens at this gathering? Dominic's expression was grim. You meet the monsters, and we find out if they'll let you live. Chapter 5. The Pack Circles. Mira spent the next day preparing like she used to prepare for fights. Methodical, focused, refusing to let fear cloud her judgment. She pulled her hair back tight, wore boots with good traction, left her jewelry at home. Anything that could be grabbed or used against her stayed behind. Old habits. Dominic picked her up at dusk, driving a different vehicle this time, a rugged SUV built for the forest roads rather than city streets. He'd barely spoken since she got in, his jaw tight, hands gripping the steering wheel with enough force to make his knuckles white. You can still back out, he said finally. I can take you home. Tell my father you ran. And then what? They hunt me down anyway? His silence was answering, enough. Then I meet the monsters, Mira said, echoing his words from yesterday. At least this way I know they're coming. He glanced at her, something like admiration flickering in his amber eyes. You should be terrified. I am terrified. I'm just good at not showing it. Chicago teach you that? Chicago taught me a lot of things. She watched the trees blur past the window. Mostly that running only works temporarily. Eventually, you have to stand and fight. This isn't a ring, Mira. There are no rules, no referee. If someone challenges you... I know. She cut him off gently. I'm not going in blind. I've dealt with territorial men before. I know how to read dominance, how to show respect without showing weakness. She paused. And I know how to hurt someone if they push too far. Dominic's mouth curved slightly. I remember. That look you gave me at the club. I'm pretty sure you were calculating exactly where to hit me for maximum damage. Solar plexus first, then throat. Strike if you stayed down. Knee to the groin if you got up. She said it matter-of-factly. I had 3 escape routes planned before Gerald told me to go to the back. He laughed. A real laugh, surprised and genuine. My wolf was right about you. Your wolf has questionable judgment. My wolf has excellent judgment. I'm the one who keeps making mistakes. He turned onto a dirt road that wound deeper into the forest. The gathering is at the heart of our territory. Sacred ground. My father will test you. Others will try to intimidate you. And there will be at least 3 pack members who want me to fail at everything I do. They'll see you as ammunition. What do I need to do? Survive. Show strength without aggression. Don't challenge anyone directly unless you're prepared to follow through. He pulled the SUV into a clearing where a dozen other vehicles were already parked. And stay close to me. My claim of protection means something, but only if I'm present to enforce it. They got out into the cooling evening air. Mira could hear voices ahead, see the flicker of a massive bonfire through the trees. Her heart rate kicked up, adrenaline flooding her system in that familiar pre-fight rush. Dominic appeared at her side, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Breathe, he said quietly. They can smell fear, but they can also smell confidence. Right now, you smell like a warrior preparing for battle. That's good. That's very good. I don't feel like a warrior. Yes, you do. He caught her hand briefly, squeezed once. You just forgot for a while. Then he released her and walked toward the gathering, and Mira had no choice but to follow. The clearing opened up into something primal, a space carved from the forest itself, ringed by ancient trees and lit by a bonfire that roared 10 feet high. 40, maybe 50 people stood in loose groups, all of them turning as Dominic and Mira emerged from the tree line. The silence was immediate and absolute. Mira felt the weight of their attention like physical pressure. These weren't just people. They were predators wearing human skin, and every single one of them was evaluating her as either prey or threat. Marcus Hale stood nearest the fire, commanding the space effortlessly. Beside him, a woman with silver blonde hair and ice-blue eyes watched Mira with undisguised hostility. "My son returns," Marcus announced, his voice carrying easily. "And he brings his pet human. How entertaining." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Dominic's hand found the small of Mira's back, a subtle gesture of support and possession. "Her name is Mira Castellan," Dominic said clearly. "She knows what we are. She's under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me." "Bold claim," the blonde woman said, stepping forward. "Does she even know what that means, Dominic? Does she understand that your protection is only worth something if you're strong enough to enforce it?" "Careful, Celine." Dominic's voice went cold. "Your ambition is showing." Celine's smile was all teeth. "Someone needs to have ambition. You've been soft for months, distracted, weak. Perhaps your father should reconsider the succession." The crowd shifted, tension crackling. This was pack politics playing out in real time, and Mira was the excuse for it. "If you have concerns about my leadership," Dominic said, his tone dangerous, "you're welcome to challenge me formally. Otherwise, show respect or leave." "Oh, I'll show respect." Celine turned her attention to Mira. "When your human proves she deserves it. Tell me, Mira Castellan, what makes you worthy of our future alpha's attention? What makes you worth the risk of exposure?" Every eye was on her now. This was the test. The moment that would define whether she lived or became a cautionary tale. Mira stepped forward, away from Dominic's protective presence. She met Celine's eyes directly. "I don't know if I'm worthy," she said, her voice steady. "I don't know your customs or your hierarchy, but I know what it's like to fight for survival. I know what it's like to pretend to be something small and harmless when you're actually something dangerous." She paused. "And I know that Dominic didn't choose to protect some helpless civilian. He chose to protect someone who could have hurt him badly that day in the club, but chose not to." Celine's eyes narrowed. "Big words. Can you back them up?" "Try me." The words were out before Mira could stop them. The crowd inhaled collectively. Even Dominic tensed. Celine's smile turned predatory. "You want to test yourself against a shifter? Bold. Stupid, but bold." She glanced at Marcus. "Alpha, do I have permission?" Marcus studied Mira for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "No shifting. Human form only. First blood or submission." His amber eyes gleamed. "Let's see what my son's pet can do." The crowd formed a circle instantly, eager and hungry. Dominic caught Mira's arm, his voice urgent and low. "You don't have to do this. We can walk away." "No, we can't." Mira pulled free gently. This was always going to happen. At least this way it's controlled. "She'll hurt you. She's been training to fight since she was 6 years old." Mira smiled, and for the first time since Chicago, she let the fighter show. "So have I." She walked into the circle. Chapter 6. Blood Speaks Louder. The circle of shifters pressed close, their excitement palpable. Mira had felt this energy before, the hungry anticipation of a crowd waiting for violence. In Chicago, it meant money changing hands, bets being placed. Here, it meant something darker, primal. Celine moved like water, graceful and confident, circling with the patience of a predator who knew she'd already won. She was taller than Mira by 3 inches, broader in the shoulders, radiating the casual strength of someone who'd never lost a fight. "Last chance to yield," Selene said, her voice carrying to the crowd. "I don't want to embarrass Dominic's little pet too badly." Mira didn't respond. She'd learned long ago that talking wasted energy better spent on observation. She watched Selene's feet, her weight distribution, the way her shoulders telegraphed movement a split second before her body followed. Selene struck first, a testing jab toward Mira's face, fast but not full commitment. Mira slipped it easily, staying just out of range. The blonde's eyes narrowed. She came again, harder this time, a combination that would have dropped most fighters. But Mira had fought women twice Selena's size in basements where the only rule was survival. She ducked, weaved, let the strikes pass harmlessly by while she measured distance and timing. "Stop running," Selene growled, frustration creeping into her voice. "I'm not running," Mira said quietly. "I'm learning." Then she struck. Her first hit was a feint, a jab that made Selene raise her guard. The second was real, a vicious body shot that landed just below the ribs with enough force to drive the air from Selene's lungs. The third came before the shifter could recover, an elbow to the jaw that snapped her head sideways. Selene staggered, shock flashing across her face. The crowd's energy changed instantly. The hungry anticipation transformed into something sharper, more intense. These weren't humans watching a bar fight. These were predators recognizing another predator. Selene spat blood and smiled. "There you are." She came at Mira with everything: speed, strength, years of training unleashed without restraint. It was brutal and beautiful and exactly the kind of fight Mira understood in her bones. She gave ground when she needed to, absorbed hits she couldn't avoid, and returned them with interest. A punch to Selene's kidney, a knee that barely missed breaking ribs, an elbow that opened a cut above the blonde's eye. But Selene was stronger, her shifter genetics giving her an edge even in human form. A backhand caught Mira across the face, splitting her lip. A sweep took her legs out. She hit the ground hard, and Selene was on her immediately, going for a submission hold that would end the fight. Mira twisted, using the momentum against her opponent. Her training had included ground fighting. Messy, desperate grappling where strength mattered less than technique and willingness to do whatever it took to survive. She got her legs around Selene's arm, hyperextending the elbow in a lock that had ended careers in Chicago. "Yield," Mira said through gritted teeth, tasting copper. Selene snarled, trying to power through. Mira applied more pressure, felt a joint reaching its limit. "Yield," she repeated, "or I break it." For a long moment, pride warred with pain on Selena's face. Then, finally, she tapped twice against the ground. "I yield." Mira released her immediately, rolling away and struggling to her feet. Her ribs screamed. The injury from Dominic's kick aggravated, probably bruised worse now. Her lip was bleeding, her knuckles split, and every breath hurt. But she was standing. The silence was absolute. 50 pairs of eyes stared at her like they were seeing her for the first time. Then someone started a slow clap. Marcus, his expression unreadable. "Well," the alpha said, "that was unexpected." He looked at Dominic. "Your pet has teeth, son, real ones." Dominic was at Mira's side in an instant, his hands hovering near her like he wanted to touch but wasn't sure he should. "Are you okay?" "I've had worse." Her voice came out rougher than intended. "Chicago, remember?" "You're insane." But he was smiling, actually smiling, something bright and fierce in his eyes that made her chest tighten. Completely, utterly insane. "She's a fighter," Selene said, climbing to her feet and wiping blood from her eyebrow. She looked at Mira with new respect. "Not bad, human. Where'd you train?" "Underground circuit, 3 years, 23 wins, no losses. Celine's eyebrows rose. No losses? I walked away before I could get 1. Mira met her gaze steadily. Turns out I'm better at running than losing. The blonde laughed, genuine and surprised. I can respect that. She glanced at Dominic. Maybe your taste isn't as terrible as I thought. Then she melted back into the crowd, leaving Mira swaying slightly from adrenaline crash and pain. Dominic's hand settled on her lower back, steadying her. We're leaving, he said, loud enough for the pack to hear. She's proven herself. Anyone who disagrees can take it up with me tomorrow. Not so fast. Marcus stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention. She's proven she can fight. But fighting isn't the same as belonging. Mira Castellan. He addressed her directly now. You've seen us. You've fought one of our best. You know what we are and what we're capable of. The question is, what do you want? It was a test. Maybe the real test. Mira could feel the weight of it, the way her answer would shape everything that came next. She looked at Dominic, at the concern in his eyes, the protective tension in his shoulders, the way he'd positioned himself to shield her from his own pack if necessary. Then she looked at Marcus, at the gathered shifters watching with predatory focus. I want the truth, she said finally. I want to understand this world. I want... She hesitated, then pushed forward. I want to stop hiding what I am. Stop pretending to be harmless when I'm not. And if that means learning to exist in a world where strength matters more than secrets, then that's what I want. Marcus studied her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. Honest. I can work with honest. He looked at his son. Take her home, tend her wounds. Tomorrow, we'll discuss what it actually means for a human to exist in our world. He turned away, dismissing them, and the crowd began to disperse. The test was over. Mira had survived. Dominic guided her back to the SUV, his touch gentle despite the obvious tension still thrumming through him. Once they were inside, away from watching eyes, he turned to her. That was the bravest, most reckless thing I've ever seen, he said quietly. You could have been killed. But I wasn't. Mira touched her split lip, wincing. I'm still here. Yes. His voice went soft, almost wondering. You are. Their eyes met in the darkness, and something passed between them. Recognition, respect, the beginning of something deeper than protection or curiosity. Something that felt dangerously like trust. Dominic started the engine, and they drove back through the forest in comfortable silence, both of them nursing wounds that went deeper than bruises and wondering what dawn would bring. Chapter 7. Healing Hurts. Dominic didn't take her home. He drove to the estate instead, and Mira was too exhausted to argue. Her adrenaline had crashed hard, leaving her shaky and aware of every injury. Her ribs throbbed with each breath. Her split lip had stopped bleeding but felt swollen and tender. Her knuckles were raw. She'd felt worse after fights. But those had been in controlled environments where she could collapse afterward, where someone would ice her injuries and tell her she'd done well. This felt different, more real, more permanent. Can you walk? Dominic asked as he parked, his voice carefully neutral. I'm bruised, not broken. But when she opened the door and tried to slide out, her ribs seized with enough pain to steal her breath. Dominic was there instantly, his arms sliding around her waist with surprising gentleness. Stubborn, he murmured, but there was no judgment in it. Just something that sounded almost like fondness. He helped her into the house, through the quiet rooms to a bathroom that was bigger than her entire studio apartment. White marble, a shower that could fit 4 people, soft lighting that didn't assault her battered senses. Sit, he said, gesturing to the closed toilet lid. Mira sat, watching as he gathered supplies: first aid kit, clean towels, a bowl of warm water. His movements were efficient, practiced. He'd done this before. "Do you get hurt often?" she asked as he knelt in front of her, carefully taking her hand to examine her split knuckles. Pack challenges happen. Dominance disputes. Training accidents. He cleaned the blood away with gentle pressure. "Shifters heal faster than humans, but we still bleed. That must be convenient. It has its advantages." He applied antiseptic and Mira hissed at the sting. "Sorry. I've had worse." "I know." He met her eyes. 23 wins. No losses. That's not luck, Mira. That's skill. That's years of dedication and pain and... He stopped, shook his head. "Why did you stop?" The question hung between them. Mira could deflect, could keep that wall up. But something about the way he was touching her, so careful, so focused, made her want to be honest. "My coach sold my contract," she said quietly. "To a man who ran the bigger circuits. The ones where people bet serious money. He wanted me to throw fights, to lose strategically so the odds would shift. When I refused, he made it clear I didn't have a choice." She watched Dominic's hands still on hers. "So I ran. Changed my name, dyed my hair, found the smallest town I could, and decided to be invisible." "You're not very good at invisible." "I'm learning that." He finished bandaging her knuckles, then reached for her face. His fingers tilted her chin up, examining her split lip with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "This is going to scar if we don't treat it properly. I have other scars. One more won't matter." "It matters to me." He dabbed at the cut with careful precision. "You fought for me tonight. Fought for the right to be in my world. That matters." "I fought for myself," Mira corrected. "I'm tired of hiding. Tired of pretending I'm something I'm not." "Then what are you?" She thought about it. Really thought about what she'd become over the years. Broken, maybe. But not weak. Never weak. Dominic's eyes held hers. Amber depths reflecting something complicated. "You're the strongest person I've met in years. Human or shifter." He set down the antiseptic, but his hand lingered on her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "And you scare the hell out of me." "Why?" "Because I can't stop thinking about you. Because my wolf chose you before I understood what that meant. Because..." He stopped, jaw tightening. "Because you make me want to be better than what my father expects. Better than the cold, ruthless alpha he's training me to become." Mira's breath caught. The air between them felt charged, dangerous in a completely different way than the fight had been. "Dominic, your ribs," he said abruptly, pulling back. "Let me check them." She should say no. Should maintain some distance, some protective barrier. Instead, she found herself lifting her shirt slowly, revealing the spectacular bruise that had spread from where he'd kicked her days ago, purple-black edged with green, now aggravated from the fight with Celine. Dominic went very still. "God, Mira, this is from me. It's healing." "It's not." His fingers hovered over the bruise without touching, like he was afraid he'd hurt her worse. "I did this. I kicked you like you were nothing, and you've been carrying this..." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The raw pain in his voice undid something in her. Mira reached out, caught his hand, pressed it gently against the unmarked skin beside the bruise. "I forgive you," she said quietly. "You were trying to survive your father's expectations. I understand that better than you think." His palm was warm against her ribs, his touch careful despite the strength she could feel coiled beneath. "You shouldn't forgive me. You should have broken my jaw that day. Maybe I still will if you don't stop apologizing." He laughed, broken and surprised. Then his expression shifted, grew serious again. Can I tell you something? Yes. The moment you looked at me without fear, something changed. My wolf recognized you as pack before I understood what that meant. We don't choose our fated... He stopped, eyes widening like he'd said too much. Fated what? Dominic stood abruptly, putting distance between them. Nothing. Forget I said that. Dominic! You should rest. His voice had gone carefully neutral. I'll take you home in the morning. He left before she could respond, the bathroom door closing with quiet finality. Mira sat there, shirt still rucked up, her skin still warm where his hand had been, and tried to process what had just happened. Fated. The word echoed in her mind, heavy with meaning she didn't fully understand but felt in her bones. Something was happening between them, something bigger than attraction, deeper than protection, something that terrified him enough to run. She stood slowly, wincing at her injuries, and caught sight of herself in the mirror. Bruised, bleeding, wearing borrowed clothes in a werewolf's mansion. 3 months ago, she'd been invisible, safe, small. Now she was anything but, and somehow, impossibly, she didn't want to go back. Mira found Dominic in the kitchen an hour later, staring out the window at the darkness beyond. He didn't turn when she entered, but his shoulders tensed. Tell me about fated mates, she said. His reflection in the window closed its eyes. Mira, tell me. I've earned the truth. A long silence. Then quietly. In shifter lore, fated mates are souls bound across lifetimes. When you find yours, everything changes. Your wolf recognizes them instantly, wants to protect them, claim them, never let them go. He finally looked at her. It's rare. Most shifters never find theirs. They choose partners, build lives, but it's different than what you feel for me. Yes. The word hung between them, confirmation and confession. Mira's heart hammered. Is that why you can't stop watching me? Why, you followed me into the forest? Yes. And does it go both ways? This fated mate thing? Dominic's expression turned pained. I don't know. For me, it's instinct. For you, you're human. You might not feel anything except... I feel something, Mira interrupted. The admission cost her, but she forced it out anyway. I don't know what it is, but since that day in the club, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you either. Hope flashed across his face, quickly suppressed. That could just be fear, adrenaline, the attraction of danger. Could be. She moved closer. Or it could be something else. They stood in the quiet kitchen, the space between them electric with possibility and fear. Two broken people circling something neither fully understood. This is complicated, Dominic said finally. I know. My world is dangerous. I noticed. And if my father thinks you're a weakness, then we'll deal with it. Mira met his eyes. Together. Something in Dominic's expression cracked open, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked young, vulnerable, human. Stay tonight, he said quietly. Please, let me make sure you're okay. It wasn't a demand, it was a request. From someone who needed to care for her as much as she needed to stop running. Okay, Mira whispered, and the walls between them began to crumble. Chapter 8. When Dawn Reveals. Everything Mira woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee drifting from somewhere below. For a disoriented moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then her ribs protested as she shifted, and everything came flooding back. The fight. The pack. Dominic's confession about fated mates. She was in his guest room. He'd insisted, despite her half-hearted protests, in a bed so comfortable it felt criminal. Her clothes from last night were folded neatly on a chair, cleaned somehow while she slept. A fresh shirt lay beside them, obviously his from the size. Mira pulled it on, the fabric soft and carrying his scent. Pine and rain and something wilder she couldn't name. It fell to mid-thigh, making her borrowed appearance obvious. But her own shirt was blood-stained and torn, so this would have to do. She found Dominic in the kitchen, standing at the stove with an ease that seemed incongruous with everything else about him. He'd changed into fresh jeans and a dark gray t-shirt, his hair still damp from a shower. He glanced up as she entered, and something in his expression softened. "You're wearing my shirt," he observed. "Mine had blood on it." Mira slid onto a bar stool, trying to ignore how domestic this felt. "You clean evidence well." Years of practice. He poured her coffee without asking how she took it, black like his, and slid a plate of eggs and toast across the counter. "How are the ribs?" "Sore, but functional." She took a sip of coffee, perfect temperature, and studied him. In the morning light, he looked different, less guarded. The harsh lines of his face had softened, and there was something almost peaceful about the way he moved through his own space. "You cook?" "Don't sound so surprised. I live alone most of the time. It was learn to cook or survive on takeout." He leaned against the counter across from her. "My father thinks it's beneath an alpha to do domestic tasks. I think that's stupid. Rebellion through breakfast. Very dangerous." His mouth quirked. "You have no idea." He watched her eat for a moment, then added quietly, "You look good in my clothes." The words hung between them, intimate and loaded with meaning. Mira's pulse kicked up. "Dominic!" The front door slammed open with enough force to rattle the windows. Marcus Hale strode in like he owned the place, which, technically, he probably did, his expression thunderous. "We need to talk." His gaze swept over Mira, taking in the oversized shirt, the domesticity of the scene, and his jaw tightened. "Alone." "No," Dominic said flatly. "Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Mira. This is pack business. She's part of this now. You made that clear last night when you tested her in front of everyone." Dominic's voice had gone cold, commanding. "So talk, or leave." Father and son stared at each other, the air crackling with tension. Finally, Marcus spoke, each word clipped and precise. "The council has questions about the human, about why you've claimed protection over her, about whether you understand what you're doing." He paused. "They want to know if she's your fated mate." Mira's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Dominic's expression went carefully blank. "That's none of their business." "Everything about the future alpha is their business." Marcus moved closer, his presence oppressive. "If she is your fated mate, it changes the succession. Human mates are complicated. They require protection, transformation ceremonies, pack approval. They become targets for anyone who wants to weaken you." "I know the politics, Father." "Do you?" Marcus's voice sharpened. "Do you understand what you're bringing into her life? The danger, the scrutiny, the absolute loss of freedom? Or are you just thinking with your wolf, consequences be damned?" "That's enough," Dominic growled, and for the first time, Mira heard the alpha in his voice, the authority that demanded obedience. But Marcus didn't back down. He turned to Mira instead, his amber eyes calculating. "Has my son told you what happens to human mates? The ritual required to bind them to the pack?" "Father, she deserves to know." Marcus smiled, cold and sharp. To become a true mate, she'd have to undergo the bite. A controlled turning that either grants shifter abilities or, he paused meaningfully, kills her. 50-50 odds, Mira Castellan. Are you willing to die for my son's instincts? The words hit like a physical blow. Mira set down her cup carefully, her mind racing. Death or transformation? Those were the options. No middle ground, no safe path forward. You're trying to scare her, Dominic said, his voice dangerous. I'm giving her information you clearly haven't. Marcus looked between them. This isn't a fairy tale. This is biology, pack law, and survival. If you claim her fully, if you mark her as yours, you're sentencing her to either join our world completely or die trying. Mira found her voice. What if I don't choose? What if I just exist? Like I am now? Then you remain human, vulnerable, a weakness anyone can exploit to hurt Dominic. And trust me. Marcus's expression was grim. They will exploit it. Celine was just the first test. There are others in the pack who would love to see my son fail. Who would use you to make that happen? The kitchen fell silent except for the tick of a clock somewhere in the house. Mira felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down on her. Stay human and become a target. Risk death for transformation. Or walk away from the only thing that had made her feel alive since Chicago. When would this ritual happen? She asked quietly. If someone chose it? Mira, you don't have to. Dominic started. When? She repeated, looking at Marcus. The Alpha studied her with something that might have been respect. Traditionally, after a claiming ceremony, public acknowledgement before the pack, but it can be done privately if the Alpha agrees. He paused. Why? Because I like having all the information before I make decisions. She stood, ignoring the protest from her ribs. Thank you for your honesty, Marcus. It's more than your son was willing to give me. Dominic flinched like she'd struck him. That's not fair, isn't it? Mira met his eyes. You told me about fated mates. You told me your wolf chose me. But you didn't mention the part where accepting that choice might kill me. I was going to... When? After I fell completely? After I was too invested to walk away? Her voice cracked despite her attempt to keep it steady. I've had enough of people making choices for me, Dominic. In Chicago, my coach decided to sell me. Here, you decided to keep secrets. I'm tired of being the thing that happens to, instead of the person making decisions. She moved toward the door, needing space, needing air, needing anything but the suffocating weight of Dominic's guilt and Marcus's knowing gaze. Mira, wait. Dominic caught her arm gently. Please, let me explain. She looked at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. The anguish there was real, raw, but so was her need for truth. Explain then, she said. All of it. No more secrets. No more protecting me from information I have a right to know. Dominic glanced at his father, who shrugged. She's right. If you're serious about this, she deserves transparency. Marcus headed toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, girl, you've got spine. More than most shifters I know. If you survive the bite, you'll make a formidable addition to the pack. He left, and the house felt suddenly too quiet. Dominic ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. I was scared, he admitted. Scared that if you knew the full cost, you'd run. And He stopped, swallowed hard. I didn't want you to run. For the first time in years, I found something that made me want to be better. And I was selfish enough to want to keep it. Keep me, you mean? No. Keep the hope. He met her eyes. That I could be more than what my father is training me to be. That strength didn't have to mean cruelty. That I could protect someone without owning them. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. You make me believe I could be the kind of alpha this pack actually needs. And there it was. the truth beneath the secrets. Not possession, but hope. Not control, but partnership. Mira felt her anger drain away, replaced by something more complicated. "This is insane," she said finally. "All of it. Werewolves, fated mates, transformation rituals that might kill me. 2 weeks ago, my biggest problem was rent money. I know. And I should walk away. Right now. Before this gets more complicated." "You should," Dominic agreed. "But I'm not going to." His eyes widened. "What?" Mira stepped closer, close enough to feel his warmth. "I'm not going to run. Not yet. But I need time, Dominic. Time to understand what this bond means. Time to make my own choice about transformation. Time to decide if I'm willing to risk everything for—" She gestured between them. "Whatever this is." "That's fair," he said softly. "More than fair. And no more secrets. No more secrets." They stood in the morning light, two broken people promising impossible things, and somehow it felt like the beginning of something real. Chapter 9. Blood Moon Rising. The threat came 3 days later. Mira had returned to work at the Sovereign Club, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy while processing everything she'd learned. Dominic had given her space, like he promised, but she felt his presence anyway. The occasional glimpse of him watching from the VIP section, the way the other staff suddenly treated her with cautious respect, the knowledge that somewhere in the forest, a wolf was keeping guard. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt safe. She was closing up the service station when Gerald approached, his expression troubled. "There's someone here to see you. Says he's an old friend from Chicago." Mira's blood went cold. "What does he look like?" "Tall, expensive suit, scar across his left eyebrow. He's waiting in the private dining room." Gerald hesitated. "Should I call the police?" "No." The word came out sharper than intended. "I'll handle it." But her hands shook as she untied her apron. There was only one person from Chicago who would track her here. Only one person who had the resources and the motivation. Vincent Cade. The man who'd bought her contract. The man she'd run from. She found him exactly where Geraldy said, sitting at a table with a glass of whiskey, looking utterly out of place in Ashwood Falls' careful charm. He smiled when he saw her, cold and proprietary. "Miranda. Or should I say, Mira." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Sit. We have business to discuss." "We have nothing to discuss." Mira stayed standing. "I don't work for you. I never did. Your coach sold me your contract, legally binding. You ran before we could finalize the terms, but that doesn't change the debt you owe." Vincent's smile widened. 23 wins, Miranda. Do you know how much money you cost me by disappearing?" "I don't care." "You should." He leaned forward. "I've been patient. Let you have your little vacation, your fresh start. But I need you back in Chicago. I have fights lined up, money invested, and you're going to fulfill your contract." "Or what?" Vincent pulled out his phone, turning it so she could see the screen. Photos. Her apartment. The club. People she'd started to care about. In this small town. Gerald. The line cook who always saved her the good coffee. The elderly woman at the hardware store who'd helped her move in. "Or I make things difficult," Vincent said softly. "For you. For everyone you've connected with here. I can be very creative about difficulty, Miranda. You know that." Mira felt ice crawl down her spine. This was the man who'd put fighters in the hospital for refusing to throw matches, who'd burned down a gym because the owner spoke to the police, who operated entirely outside the law because he owned enough cops and judges to stay untouchable. "How long?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. 6 months, 25 fights. Then we're even, and you can go back to playing Waitress." He stood, buttoning his jacket. Car picks you up tomorrow morning. Don't make me come find you again. He left, and Mira stood frozen in the private dining room, her carefully built life crumbling around her. She lasted 10 minutes before she broke. Before she pulled out her phone and called the number Dominic had given her, her fingers trembling on the screen. He answered on the first ring. Mira? What's wrong? I need help. The words caught in her throat. Can you come get me? I'm already on my way. 15 minutes later, Dominic pulled up outside the club. Mira climbed into his SUV without a word, and he took one look at her face before driving. Not toward town, but deeper into the forest. He brought her to a clearing she'd never seen before, a place where moonlight filtered through the trees and the air felt thick with ancient power. He killed the engine and turned to her. Tell me what happened. So she did. Everything. Vincent, Chicago, the contracts and the threats and the photographs. The 6 months of fighting or watching everyone she cared about suffer. Dominic listened in absolute silence, but she watched his hands tighten on the steering wheel, watched his jaw clench until she thought it might shatter. His name is Vincent Cade, she finished. He's not someone you can just fight, Dominic. He has connections, resources. He's untouchable. No one is untouchable? Dominic's voice was flat, dangerous. Especially not someone who threatens what's mine. I'm not. Yes, you are. He looked at her, and his eyes had gone wolf amber in the darkness. You're mine, Mira. My mate, even if you haven't decided about the bond yet. And no one threatens what's mine. The possessiveness should have scared her. Instead, it lit something fierce in her chest. He has photos of people I care about, she said quietly. If I don't go back, then I make sure he can't hurt them, or you, or anyone. Dominic reached over, taking her hand. You're not going back to Chicago. You're not fighting for him. I won't allow it. You can't just... Watch me. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her bruised knuckles. I told you I'd protect you. That's not conditional. That's not negotiable. Dominic, he's dangerous. So am I. His eyes met hers. So are you. So is the entire pack if I call them. Vincent Cade threatened my mate. Do you understand what that means in our world? Mira shook her head. It means war, Dominic said softly. It means every shifter in this territory becomes your guardian. It means we hunt him down and make absolutely certain he never threatens you again. He paused. If you'll let me. If you'll trust me with this. Trust. The word hung between them, heavy with meaning. Mira had spent 3 years not trusting anyone, handling everything herself, surviving alone. But looking at Dominic now, at the fierce protectiveness in his eyes, the absolute certainty in his voice, she realized she was tired of being alone. What do we do? She asked. Relief flooded his expression. First, we move you. Tonight. Bring you here, to the estate, where I can keep you safe. Then I talk to my father. The pack has ways of dealing with outside threats. His voice went cold. Vincent Cade picked the wrong woman to threaten. He'll retaliate. He'll hurt people. Not if he disappears first. At her shocked look, Dominic added, I'm not talking about murder. I'm talking about making him understand that Ashwood Falls is protected territory. That you're protected. That coming here was the biggest mistake of his life. Mira wanted to argue. Wanted to insist she could handle this herself. That she didn't need saving. But the truth was, she was terrified. And having someone strong enough to stand with her, someone who looked at her like she mattered more than anything, that changed everything. Okay, she whispered. Help me. Dominic pulled her across the console into his arms, and Mira let herself collapse against his chest, let herself breathe in his scent, and feel his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. For the first time since Vincent appeared, she felt like she could breathe. "I've got you," Dominic murmured into her hair. "I swear on my life, Mira, I've got you." And despite everything, the danger, the uncertainty, the impossible complications of their bond, Mira believed him. She was done running alone. Now she had a wolf at her side. Chapter 10. The Alpha's Verdict. The Pack Council convened within the hour. Mira stood in the great room of the Hale estate, surrounded by shifters whose names she was only beginning to learn. Marcus sat in a high-backed chair that looked more like a throne, his expression unreadable. Celine leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, watching with sharp interest. A dozen others filled the space: betas, enforcers, elders whose eyes held centuries of accumulated wisdom. And Dominic stood beside Mira, close enough that their shoulders touched. A united front. "Vincent Cade," Marcus said, rolling the name over his tongue like he was tasting it. "Chicago underground, money laundering, illegal fighting rings, suspected connections to organized crime." He looked at Mira. "You chose interesting enemies." "I didn't choose him. He bought my contract from someone I trusted." Mira kept her voice steady. "I ran because staying meant becoming property. And now he's here, threatening our territory, threatening someone under my son's protection." Marcus's gaze swept the room. "The question before this council is simple. Do we act?" "She's human," someone said from the back. A man Mira didn't recognize, his tone dismissive. "Her problems aren't ours." "She fought Celine and won," another voice countered. "She's earned consideration." "Earning consideration isn't the same as earning pack protection against outside threats." "Enough." Marcus's single word silenced the room. He looked at Dominic. "You claim her as mate. Fated bond or not, that claim carries weight. But it also carries responsibility. If we move against this human, we risk exposure. We risk bringing outside attention to our territory. Are you prepared to accept those consequences?" Dominic didn't hesitate. "Yes. Even if it costs you the succession? Even if the council decides you're too compromised by human attachment to lead?" The room went deathly quiet. Mira felt her heart stop. This was it. The choice Marcus had been pushing toward since the beginning. The pack or her. Leadership or love. Dominic's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "I'd rather be compromised by something real than perfectly cold and alone. If the council thinks caring about someone makes me weak, then maybe I'm not the alpha this pack needs." He looked at his father. "But I think you're wrong. I think an alpha who protects his people, all his people, not just shifters, is exactly what we need." Marcus studied his son for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. "Good answer." He stood, and the room seemed to shift around his presence. "Vincent Cade threatened someone under our protection. He brought his violence into our territory. That cannot stand." His voice went hard. "We'll handle this the way we handle all threats. Swiftly, decisively, and with enough force that no one else gets ideas about testing us." Relief flooded through Mira so strongly her knees went weak. Dominic steadied her, his grip firm and reassuring. "What do you need from me?" Mira asked Marcus. The alpha's eyebrows rose. "From you?" "This is my fight, my past. I won't hide behind the pack while you clean up my mess." She straightened, ignoring her still healing ribs. "Tell me what I can do to help." Marcus exchanged a glance with Dominic, something passing between them that might have been approval. "You can stay here. Let us work. And trust that when we move against threats, we don't fail." "That's not—" "Mira." Dominic turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. "Let us do this. Please. You fought alone for years. Let someone else carry the weight for once." She wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed at her to be active, to fight, to control the situation. But, looking at Dominic's face, at the determination there, the need to protect her, she realized this was his fight too now. His way of proving what he'd said. That she mattered. That he'd stand with her. "Okay," she said quietly. "But I want updates. No disappearing for days while I worry." "Deal." He pressed a kiss to her forehead, quick and gentle. "Celine, can you stay with her while we handle this?" The blonde shifter pushed off the wall. "Babysitting duty? Really?" "Protection duty," Dominic corrected. "Mira needs someone who can fight if Cade has backup plans." Celine studied Mira, then nodded slowly. "Fine. But she owes me a rematch when this is over." "Looking forward to it," Mira said, meaning it. The council dispersed quickly after that, shifters moving with purpose toward whatever plan Marcus had already formulated. Within minutes, the great room emptied until only Mira, Dominic, and Celine remained. "How long will this take?" Mira asked. "Hours, maybe a day." Dominic brushed his thumb across her cheekbone. "Cade is staying at the Riverside Inn. We'll pay him a visit, make our position clear. And if he doesn't listen?" Dominic's eyes flashed amber. "Then we make it impossible for him to not listen." The implied threat hung in the air. Mira should be disturbed by the violence inherent in that statement. Instead, she felt something else. Gratitude. Safety. The knowledge that for once, someone was willing to fight for her rather than use her as a weapon. "Be careful," she whispered. "Always." He kissed her then, really kissed her, deep and claiming and desperate. When he pulled back, his voice was rough. "When this is over, we talk. About everything. About the bond, the ritual, what you want. No more interruptions. Promise?" "Promise." He left and the house felt suddenly too quiet. Celine dropped onto the couch with feline grace. "So, you and Dominic. Fated mates. That's complicated." "That's one word for it." Mira sat across from her, exhaustion finally catching up. "Do you think I'm crazy? For staying?" "Crazy? No." Celine tilted her head, considering. "Brave? Definitely. Most humans run when they discover what we are. You ran toward it, fought for your place. That takes guts. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing." Celine's expression softened slightly. "For what it's worth, I think Dominic needs you. He's been drowning in his father's expectations for years, trying to be the perfect cold alpha when that's not who he is. You make him remember he's allowed to care about things." "He told you that?" "Didn't have to. I've known him since we were kids. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." She paused. "Like you're the answer to a question he didn't know he was asking." Mira's chest tightened. "What if I can't be that? What if I'm just broken, from Chicago, from everything?" "Then you're perfect for each other." Selena's smile was surprisingly kind. "He's broken too. Maybe that's why the bond chose you. Two people who understand what it means to survive the hard way." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Two fighters who'd beaten each other bloody now sharing space like allies. Like friends, almost. "Can I ask you something?" Mira said finally. "Depends on the question. The transformation ritual. The bite. How much does it hurt?" Celine's expression grew serious. "You're considering it?" "I don't know. Maybe." Mira pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. "Everyone keeps talking about the 50-50 odds, death or shifter. But nobody talks about what the actual experience is like." "It's agony," Celine said bluntly. "Your body tears itself apart and rebuilds. Every cell, every bone, every instinct. It takes hours. And if you're not strong enough, mentally, physically, spiritually, you don't make it through." "But you did." I was born into this. My body was prepared from infancy. You? She shook her head. You'd be forcing a change that nature never intended. It's dangerous, Mira. More dangerous than Marcus made it sound. Then why would anyone choose it? Because the alternative is being permanently vulnerable in a world full of predators. Because loving a shifter means accepting that you'll age while they don't. Because... Celine met her eyes. Because some bonds are worth dying for. The words settled over Mira like a weight. Worth dying for. Was that what she and Dominic had? Or was it just attraction, adrenaline, the intoxication of danger? She didn't know yet, but she was starting to think she wanted to find out. Thank you, Mira said quietly, for being honest. That's what we do in this pack, even when the truth hurts. Celine stood, stretching. Come on. If we're stuck here for hours, at least let me teach you some defensive moves. Next time someone threatens you, I want you able to break their arm before Dominic has to ride in and save you. Despite everything, Mira smiled. Deal. And as they moved, furniture aside to create space for training, Mira realized something important. She wasn't just falling for Dominic. She was falling into his world, finding her place among the wolves. The question was whether she'd survive long enough to claim it.